Sue introduced me as a pensions person. Indeed, I have led a piece of work for the RSA for the last 3 years, which is looking at what pensions might look like, particularly in the private sector in Britain in the future. But I'm also a Labour Party person, and some of you may know me as Finance Director of the Labour Party, and I was a councillor in Westminster for a number of years, some years ago. But on pensions, look, I'd really have 3 things that I would say to this audience. And the first one is this, that one of the really great achievements of the Labour movement, not just the Labour Party, the Labour movement of the last 100 years, was the set-up of the occupational pension system. And that occupational pension system in the private sector is about to collapse. That's bad news. The good news is that I think there is a solution. But unless we start to crystallise as trade unionists, as a labour movement, as representatives of working people, unless we do that, this opportunity is likely to be lost. And then my third thing is that I hope I might persuade a few of you who are particularly interested in the pensions area that you would become involved with Unions 21, or maybe with the Association of Member Nominating Trustees, or with the RSA, and the sort of work we're doing. And look, if you and the work we're doing is not to say, look, just there needs to be more money put into pensions, or employers need to put more money in. It is that the structure of the pension system that we set up in the 40s and the 50s is becoming undermined. Let me explain with just one fact that I hope you find startling, which is that if a typical 25-year-old in Holland today were to start saving for their pension exactly the same amount as a 25-year-old in the UK, and they both had exactly the same life expectancy and retired on exactly the same day, that Dutch person would have a 50% larger pension than the British person. A 50% higher pension, because the Dutch system is so much more productive in the way that it operates than is the British system. And that is both, I think, a shocking fact about what it is that we're offering people today in Britain, because I always thought that the promise of Britain was something that the generation that was growing up would at least have as good an opportunity as the generation that was retiring. And also simply, it's massively, massively inefficient when 6.5% of our GNP is spent each year on private pensions. So why did this happen? Because 25 years ago, if you'd come to the UK, people would have said, well, the Dutch system and the British system, they're kind of similar. The Dutch system is much more comprehensive, but it covers about 90-95%. The British system only 50-55%. But broadly, your structure is the same. What went wrong? And we've had some of the answers to that in what people said. In the 1990s, you'll remember, employers thought that they had more than enough money set aside to pay the pension. By the way, the pension promise was not a hard promise. It was an expectation of what they thought they would be able to do. But they said, look, we've got more money than we need. We want to take a pension fund holiday. And quite properly, the representatives, the trustee representatives of the beneficiaries, of the workers, said, that's all very well for you to take a holiday. But if you do that, you need to make a hard promise that that money that you're expecting to be able to pay, you absolutely will pay that money. And so that deal was done. Fast forward 10 years to the noughties, we discover that life expectancy is getting greater and greater, as Malcolm has said. The employers look at the bill that's associated with this, they're not making the returns, the accounting is being done in daft ways, and they're very concerned about this and say, look, we can't afford to have new people joining this pension fund. So firstly, for the new people, they stop new people joining the DB, the defined benefit pension fund. And do you know now what's happening? Is that those defined benefit pension funds are being closed even for existing members. Of course, the promises made in the past, that will be kept. But that defined benefit system is being lost. And instead, people are having individual savings accounts put up for them. DC it's called, individual defined contribution. And there's a big problem with these. They're really expensive. And people don't notice the costs. Let me give you an example. If you pay 1% per annum on your pension from age of 25 through to 85 and you die when you're 85, 25% of your money, your possible money, will go in fees. You pay 2% a year, half your money's gone. 3% you paid so much in fees in the early years that only 2/3 of your money is gone. But you get my point. A small number every year absolutely destroys your pension. You need to keep costs low. If you're forced, as you are with an individual savings account, when you buy, to buy an annuity so that you know what your income is, you know what the cost of an annuity is compared to the cost to invest to create that money? It's about 75 pence in the pound. That's why the Dutch can pay a 50% plus better pension than we are able to pay in the UK, because we've moved from very efficient collective systems to extremely inefficient individual systems. And look, some of that is because there are people through the system that are ripping you off. That is happening and should be objected to. But some of this just has to do with the fact that we've got the wrong architecture for pensions. And we need something that looks like the Dutch system for pensions. And I'm really an investment person rather than a pensions person. I got involved in this about 3 years ago, when somebody said, you know, you go on about responsible investment, David, but have you ever actually asked people what they want from the pension system? And the RSA paid for these citizen juries to talk to people about what they wanted from the pension system. And I wanted them to talk about BP's environmental policy and takeovers and mergers and all that sort of. They didn't. I said, David, what we want to do is to give our money away to somebody who's absolutely trustworthy, will absolutely look after it in the best way that they possibly can on our behalf. And look, we'll forgive them if they make a mistake, providing it's not an absolutely foolish one. But what we want to do is to give this problem away, and we would expect that our money is responsibly invested. That looks like a Dutch system of pensions, not like the individual DC system of pensions that we have now. And one of the reasons that it's so hard in the public sector to defend public sector pensions is because they look like what we had 25 years ago, but they don't look like what the private sector's got now. And in this Procrustean argument of you've got to get public sector pensions down to where private sector pensions is just the wrong way to go. But also, it's critical, it seems to me, that if you're campaigning on public sector pensions, that your first punch, your hardest punch, is to improve what we're doing on private sector pensions before trying to defend public sector pensions against everything. So what do we need to do? It seems to me we need to have an agenda to bring back collective pensions like the Dutch system. That may mean there is some flexibility about how much the payout is. Look, if longevity goes up, so on and so forth. DC pensions in the UK, the expected payout has fallen by 40–50% in the past 10 years. In Holland, the financial crisis has taken a maximum of 6% of people's pensions phased in over years. It's possible to do this. It's possible to have a system that works quite well. And it would seem to me that if you're a trade unionist, if you're a trustee, the people that were at those citizen juries, most of whom were in the private sector, they need you desperately to be talking to them about what it is that's coming on their pension before those 2.4 million people that we talked about who are still in private sector DB schemes lose out on what they should be entitled to. So as I said, 3 things. We're not careful, we're going to lose one of the great achievements of the labour movement. If we get an agenda, this can be saved. It doesn't need a strike, it needs lots of jaw, it needs lots of consensus, but this thing can be saved. And I hope that some of you might like to join up with the Association of Member Nominated Trustees or with Unions 21 or with what we're doing at the RSA, because it's a scandal that a Dutch person gets a 50% larger pension than a British person, but it's also an enormous opportunity. Thank you very much.